my tears turn to laughter, that child long ago. My soul starts to linger, it's home I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along.
This is my stop. At one time, it was thought that the country extended from Halifax to this point in southwestern Ontario, where Lake Huron funnels into the St. Clair River. This was the last frontier of Canada West. Until the completion of the Transcontinental Railway, you had to take a steamer or a schooner to destinations further on. So let's take a look at what is today the city of Sarnia. A major engineering feat, the evolution of a Great Lakes port, and the first discovery of oil in North America are part of our story. This vast collection of pipes, towers, and tanks, an impressive series of multi-billion-dollar petrochemical plants along the St. Clair River, is referred to as Chemical Valley. On a hot summer's day, though, everyone calls it Blue Water Country. The geography of this region has given shape to its history. Protected from Lake Huron by Point Edward, the calm waters of Sarnia Bay provide a natural harbor, which laid the foundation for the present city. Located in Lambton County, Sarnia serves as a commercial, business, and government center. Many of the family names originate with the first wave of French settlers who left the surrendered fort of Detroit during the American Revolution. They intermingled with the Chippewa Indians of the region. Today, Sarnia is quite distinctive among other Canadian communities in that contained within its city limits is a reserve populated by native bands. At its front door is the Seaway system, the busiest waterway in the world. Over 100 million tons of shipping each year goes under the International Blue Water Bridge, a beacon to mariners for over 50 years. Long before the days of luxury cruise ships like this, Father Louis Hennepin, a French missionary, came through here aboard the Griffin, the first ship to sail the Great Lakes. We sailed up the canal, but we were forced to drop our anchors near the mouth of the lake, he wrote in his diary of 1698, for the extraordinary quantity of waters which came down from the upper lake had so much augmented the rapidity of the current of this strait that it was as violent as that of Niagara. Just took a tour around the second deck. Yeah. Just took a tour around the second deck. Not one to turn down a shift in the wheelhouse, I found Harbor Master Ken Armitage's tour of the waterfront revealing. For one thing, these waters haven't lost their appeal to young daredevils. For another, the invisible Canada-US boundary divides the river, making Sarnia an international city, sharing cultural and social ties with neighboring Port Huron, Michigan. And traditional enterprise thrives. Purdy Fisheries has been operating for 4 generations. The family carries on a custom which began with the native people. By 1830, a second wave of immigration from England and Scotland occupied the bordering lands known as the Flats. For them, the plentiful stocks in Lake Huron created a profitable early industry. To Milford Purdy, fishing these waters is more than just a job.
Our family started fishing in Sarnia Bay, probably around 1900. They had flat-bottom wooden boats, and they'd pull in close to the beach, and then you hook onto them with a team of horses, and the team of horses would pull the boats up out of the surf so they wouldn't get banged up in the waves, and that's the way they fished. The kinds of fish that we catch, there's approximately 23 different kinds, but the main fish are whitefish, pickerel, perch, catfish, sheephead, sturgeon, redfin, and that's the main one. So we also catch silver bass and white perch and rock bass and some of the other ones, but they're not significant as far as commercial catch goes. Like on pickerel now, we're getting close to 50% that is sold locally through our local outlet, and then the excess is shipped out and they go to New York, Chicago, Detroit, Toronto, Montreal, and that's basically the main markets that we ship to.
Lawrence, Vidal, and Cameron are some of the pioneering families that have left their mark here. A retired chemical engineer, Hugo Holland now enjoys researching the community's origins.
In 1830, it was known roughly as the Rapids because of the rough water at Point Edward. By 1834, there were some 43 heads of families in the community. They thought it was high time to have a proper name. The Scots faction wanted it to be called New Glasgow. The Englishmen were triumphant, and they named it Sarnia, or Port Sarnia, at the suggestion of the Lieutenant Governor Colburn, who at one time had been governor of the Isle of Guernsey, whose Roman name, or Latin name, was Sarnia.
The affinity to the water is unbroken. Sarnia emerged as a port of importance on the Great Lakes in the mid-1800s. It was a rendezvous for captains and crews of the vessels that made it their home port. Today, the community is home port for the Abbotts. For more than 40 years, the family has built Olympic-class sailboats. One design, the Soling, is recognized worldwide. Their vessels have won more medals than all others combined. Each year, they challenge the best in the 250-mile Port Huron to Mackinac, Michigan race. The quest for good design is something inherited from their predecessors. The forests of Lambton County bore the timber for barkentines and schooners to carry trade goods and passengers. The transportation network was completed in 1860 with the arrival of the Great Western and Grand Trunk Railways. The main terminal at nearby Point Edward was abuzz with activities.
The Beaubien line ran the ships, and they had a very prosperous trade in moving immigrants to the far west, dropping them either at Duluth, where they could go up to Winnipeg by the American Railway, or to Port Arthur, Fort William, where they could make that horrible trip overland through the wilderness. They also supplied baths, that is, separate sheltered areas in the river, because they found that the immigrants, by the time they had landed at Halifax, after a ocean crossing with relatively little spare water, then traveled by train to Sarnia, were only too glad to bathe in the St. Clair, no matter how damn cold it was.
The Beatty line of luxury ships was the pride of every Sarnian for the 80-odd years of its life. It was while harbor activity was at its peak that the greatest single industrial resource would be discovered 300 feet below the ground. They call it the music of the jerker lines. It comes from these rods running through the acres of farmland here in Lambton County, driving the pumps, perpetually bobbing like a teeter-totter. These pumps, kept in motion by the jerker line system, tell the story of black gold, a discovery that was to have a profound effect on the economic future of Sarnia and this entire region. The interior of the county had been virtually uninhabited until the 1850s. Then, towns like Oil Springs and Petrolia popped up overnight. The rock poured me out rivers of oil. Itinerant photographer cum speculator Hugh Nixon Shaw had followed others, but his ecstatic quote from Job on hitting a gusher set off a boom. The first discovery of oil in North America. Charles Fairbanks Jr. has come home to his roots. He introduced me to a pioneering legacy on the family farm.
This is it. The 5-horsepower engine is driving the counter shaft, which is driving the bull wheel and over to the spur gear, driving the 2 vertical eccentrics and out to the slider blocks, and then that'll go out to a field wheel that is quite a way out beyond there. It's just a steam engine turned around.
Yeah. And that's a little 5-horsepower?
That's right. It drives everything. Oh, this is double jerker power. I mean, this is the ultimate of high technology in this stuff.
That's 1932.
That's right. Yeah. Those Pittman arms have been going since 1932. They've never been replaced.
Same ones?
Yeah. These lines here are that went in the 30s. You can tell by the kind of wood it is. This is
those pieces of wood have been.
This one here,
swinging back and forth here since the 30s?
That's been there, yeah.
What is it?
It's a type of fir, western fir. They bought it specially because they could get it in long lengths.
This is the kind of stuff you were talking about that forms a kind of tar.
That's right.
That was down there.
Yeah, years and years of just oiling all the moving parts.
Yeah.
And that's what's left.
Yeah.
That's the pumping end. This is that's a polish rod going into a stuffing box.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuffing box has got rubber rings in it to tighten down on the polish rod, so that you're able to force the fluid through an underground line, and that's the stuff.
That's the real crude oil. Charlie, it's hard to believe that this jerker line system and that pump back there are basically the same as they were 130 years ago.
That's exactly right. My great-grandfather came here and started this whole system.
Was he the man who discovered the oil on the property?
I wish he were. Actually, John Millier Williams was the one who discovered the oil, but my great-grandfather was here very shortly after that.
Yeah. And he devised a system to get it out of the ground.
Exactly.
Did they ever have gushers here?
Oh, you bet. There's one down in the flats, very
here?
close to where we are right now. It was called the Shaw Well. The thing blew out 2,500 barrels a day for a matter of weeks.
How did they control that?
They didn't.
Are you kidding?
They got as many pots and pans as they could find, but basically the stuff went into the creek and was lost. They had to jump from tree to tree in order to get to the well site because it was so
it was
oily.
on the ground.
Yeah.
On the ground. What would they get for a barrel of oil then?
They got $10 a barrel when things were really tight, and they got 10 cents a barrel when things were really open.
So there'd be time. I can see what you mean by boom or bust.
Oh yeah, the Oil Springs was a boom town for a long period of time. The hotels, they didn't have enough of them, so they would put people to sleep in shifts.
Oh, yeah.
And they also had the proverbial sign on the wall that they're supposed to take their boots off before they went to bed and that sort of thing. They had one source of water, and that was a creek. Yeah. And the horses drank out of it, and the people washed in it, and they mixed their whiskey with it as well.
So it'd be a real gold rush type.
Oh, exactly like the Klondike.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was up and it was gone in a matter of 5 or 6 years.
That fast.
Yeah.
But it's still operating. But there's still oil in other fields. There's still oil in the fields that you have here. Why did it drop so quickly?
Petrolia came on stream, and it was much bigger. It's 10 times the field that Oil Springs was in size. There was good money to be made in Petrolia, and the field was starting to decline in Oil Springs, so they just picked the whole town up and moved it to Petrolia.
I see.
Just as they picked up Petrolia and moved it to Sarnia, and years later when Imperial Oil's refinery moved there. The big problem with the oil business here in the early days was that you could not get the stuff from one place to the other. They were going through the Great Enniskillen Swamp. A team of horses was able to take 1 barrel of oil to the railhead at Wyoming, which would then ultimately get over to Sarnia. So then they built a plank road, which very rapidly disintegrated. Then they built a pipeline, and then they ultimately brought in a railroad to Oil Springs and Petrolia. And that was all trying to get it to the refineries, which were first of all in Petrolia and then subsequently in Sarnia.
Did anybody really get rich off this field?
Yep, the same people that get rich on it today, the land speculators.
The music of the jerker lines. The Canadian $10 bill. What's interesting about it, aside from the fact that it might buy you lunch, is that it depicts events that took place here not long after Confederation. Oil, pumped in from surrounding Lambton County, created an industry that has grown into the largest petrochemical center in the country. On the face of it is Sir John A. It was his political goof that gave Sarnia's Alexander Mackenzie the opportunity he was looking for. Mackenzie came to Sarnia as a builder who later became a newspaper owner. The Pacific Railway scandal that rocked Sir John A.'s rule in 1872 saw Mackenzie elected as Prime Minister in Canada's first Liberal government. In office for 5 years, the introduction of the secret ballot and the Supreme Court of Canada were his notable accomplishments. The close of the 19th century saw the railway becoming a major competitor to ships. Fierce rivalry festered at Sarnia's waterfront. Chicago meatpackers, wanting faster delivery to widespread markets, pressured for alternative ways of crossing the St. Clair River. The established method of ferrying trains just wasn't fast enough. The result? The construction of an international tunnel under the river, the first of its kind in the world.
The tunnel operated with steam locomotives until about 1910. Unfortunately, there were several serious accidents. Cars would be separated into a tunnel filled with smoke and exhaust gases. People would go in a brave attempt to try and get them out. Sometimes they were successful. Sometimes everybody lost their lives.
As in all industries, ways have to be found to accommodate change, and that happened with the railways. Some of today's train cars are oversized. They just won't fit into the tunnel. And so, 20 years or so ago, they started ferrying them again. 24-hour shunting of rail traffic on the International Floating Railway, Sarnia to Port Huron, Michigan. What's that old expression? The more things change, the more they remain the same. The realities of moving some goods across the continent, cars and trucks, for example, makes more economic sense in extended units such as these. Although most trains continue to run under the river, each year, 5.5 million tons of cargo in 80,000 rail cars is shuttled across the St. Clair. For the pilots of these ferries, the 15-minute trip can sometimes be likened to zigzagging a 4-lane expressway at rush hour. A trip through blue water land.
To that place we call home.
The foundation upon which Sarnia is built is evident even to the most casual observer. Its history is its geography, and it begins and ends here with the waterfront. There is a feeling here of perpetual motion, of constant activity, people doing. And that, in fact, is the spirit of this community. And it's something that really has never changed. I'm Harvey Kirk.
To that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we